everybody, Jonathan Broadbent here, your host of UnWoke.Academy. This one's going to be fairly short and sweet. A couple of show notes. Don't forget to mark your calendar, or actually, not even calendar, set your alarm for tonight at 6:30. We're going to go live with Laura Shar from Gold Standard Elections. If you're on the social media platform X, you can find Gold Standard Elections and all about the work that they've done researching different methods for holding elections. And we're going to talk about the machines, the voting track record, all kinds of things. You name it. If it has to do with elections, specifically in the United States, we're going to be talking about that tonight with Laura Shar, 6:30 p.m. Eastern Time. We'll be live again, of course, just like this on Facebook, YouTube, X, and Rumble. That will all be under UnWoke.Academy. However, on X, I do these shows live under my personal profile. There's a much larger following under my personal profile on X. That is JR Broadbent. So just first initial, middle initial, JR, and my last name. Find me on X if you're not on there, because it gives you an opportunity to ask questions. Whatever platform you're on, this conversation and ones like it, feel free to chime in with your thoughts, comments, or questions. There are some of our followers who were asking all sorts of questions about these riots that are taking place. And I'm going to just sort of tease this out as a preface to some future episodes that I plan on doing. It is alleged currently that the heiress, I think she is to the Walmart, the retail brand Walmart, may be somehow involved in financing these riots. There's all kinds of talk about the pallets of bricks, I guess, that are showing up, and helmets that are being provided, and masks, and all kinds of stuff. These kinds of things don't happen organically. It takes a lot of money to fund and organize these things. And if it is discovered that there are foreign agitators involved or questionable characters, part of what we hope to do at UnWoke.Academy, or some of our colleagues over on the nonprofit, non-governmental organization tracking side of things, is to figure it out. We're the follow the money people. I mean, after all, the Unwoke mantra is we are where, or one of them is we are where freedom economy meets follow the money. So if there are corporations out there, we want to find them if they are using their profit, the corporate profit, in really bad and harmful ways. We've already uncovered many of them. And there are lots of people out in the ether who are tracking these kinds of things. I like to think, or it's my understanding, that we represent probably the only people with a broad spectrum of Wall Street type background applied to the equation. But whatever it is, it's a team effort. And we want to uncover those sorts of things. One of them in particular, it's calling itself No Kings. And we have these riots that are planned, or whatever you want to call them, these pop-up agitator movements all over the country. And I think many of them are planned for this Saturday, the 14th, that are going to be all over the country. I see a few that are near me. And of course, we want to track down and follow the money. And if there are bad actors behind it, we do have some indication. Pardon me, I'm going to take a sip of my water. By the way, I get questions from people periodically. Keep up the fun. I get messages all the time about these shows that I do, asking what that is. I tend to drink a lot of water with either lemon or lime in it. I just like it better. So that's what that is. It's not cloudy water. It's not somehow, I don't know, it's whatever else. It's just water with this. In this case, I think it's lime. I did lime this morning. Anyway, I want to get into a little bit of a behind the curtains rant. And this is particularly agitating to me. And I've talked about it for years. It should be more front of mind, more commonly known and talked about than it is. And I want to put it in this context. I think we got to the point a long time ago for anybody who pays attention to politicians and the corruption that happens in politics, where you've seen that sort of running joke. We wish that they would wear a jacket with the logos of all the buyers on them, whoever owns them. And recently, that's been particularly prevalent in the discussion around big pharma, because big pharma holds sway over many, many politicians. It's becoming clear and really very evident. In fact, in my state of Ohio, there's been a long time push for medical freedom bills. In fact, in Ohio, we have a premier organization, one of the best in the country, I believe, called Ohio Advocates for Medical Freedom. If you're in Ohio or really anywhere, follow them. If you don't have something similar in your state, duplicate what they're doing. It's Ohio Advocates for Medical Freedom. And one of the things that came out of that, I think in my mind, relates directly to the things that I keep talking about at UnWoke.Academy, and that's undue financial influence. There should be no undue financial influence. You'd like to think that when you meet with some professional, really in any walk of life, in any professional regard, if you're meeting with a lawyer or an accountant or your politician, for heaven's sakes, you'd like to think that they're representing you and your best interests. The question is, are they truly? And part of today's conversation, I'm going to seek to tackle that question. And I'm referencing, this is an email that I got. I pulled it up on my phone, so bear with me a second here. I'm reading a bit off of my phone. There's a cottage industry that has grown around the world of finance that constantly talks about and works on and agitates for and cultivates the buying of what are called books of business. And it should infuriate everybody. Nobody should be buying your doctor or your lawyer or your politician, and for heaven's sakes, your financial advisor. So, whoever it is, whatever they call themselves, your financial planner, your broker, your advisor, your representative, whatever, you should be, you should start and insist upon the premise that they represent your interests. Well, here's an environment where I'm going to make the argument that they cannot, they don't, and they can't. It's called book buying. So here's what that looks like. And I mean, you can find all kinds of information online about it and look it up, and you can find information. If you work with a financial professional, ask questions. Just like you ask questions of your doctor. Or I think a lot or a growing number of people are now to the point where they're comfortable pushing back a little bit. I think as kids, maybe prior to 6 years ago or something, if the doctor said so, we would get the pill bottle and go home and gulp them down twice a day for a month or whatever, or just roll up our sleeve and get the injection. Now, people are waking up in lots of different aspects and avenues in life and asking questions. A big part of my discussions like this is to encourage you to ask questions and to give you the questions to ask. Ask about their book of business. Here's what that means in my world. Any financial professional serves some number of different types of clients. Some will represent or work on behalf of corporations, and you can have part of what they do might involve insurance or banking or investment management or manager selection, which usually means buying something like mutual funds or looking specifically directly for managers when they're big pools of money. Sorry, that's a little bit in the weeds, but there are different roles that a financial advisor type of person might fill. The combination of all of those relationships represents what's called a book of business, which means that they may have 500 clients, and those clients represent $200 million dollars or something. Let's just pick some arbitrary numbers. That is called a book of business in my world, in our nomenclature in the financial world. And I I think in fairly black and white terms, my concept of what that relationship should look like is that person should receive just compensation for doing the research and work and due diligence and customer service and providing some good and valuable service to those clients that he or she serves. Seems simple, right? The more in my world, the bigger that book of business, the more other firms, wherever you are not, try to entice you and lure you over. So if you're at some Wall Street based firm, which is, we've got oh, there's a note. Sovereignator, thanks for reposting the stream. So by the way, I think I mentioned, if you do have any questions or comments, thoughts that occur to you during the course of this discussion, feel free to post those. I will see them, and if I can, I'll incorporate those into our discussion. So let's say that you are some sort of financial advisor and you've worked for some years and amassed this book of business, and you're at some Wall Street firm or wherever, any kind of financial firm or insurance firm. Other firms will try to lure you over to their firm, and it's ugly. It's bad. They don't do it in any sort of traditional way. They don't say, we have a nicer office, or we're going to give you 2 assistants instead of 1, or you get a cool parking spot right in the front. They might do those things as well. But what they do is offer a bonus on whatever money you're making off of it. So let's walk through that and lift the hood. So let's say that your $200 million makes you $1 million a year. So you're making $1 million. I'm just picking round numbers or easily understood numbers. So you're this financial advisor. I've put you in this role now. Just imagine yourself, and you've worked for years, and you've got some corporations and some small businesses and some individuals and families, and maybe you help work on behalf of some trusts or whatever. That book of business makes you $1 million a year in income. Again, it's just a round number. What firms will do is tell that person, if you move that whole book of business over to our firm instead of the firm where you are, we're going to give you an upfront of not $1 million, but sometimes upwards of $2 million. They'll give 24 months sometimes in an upfront bonus. It's just a big fat windfall check. So if you're in that position of relying on or having gotten comfortable with a 7-figure income, and somebody comes along and says, we'll buy that, we're gonna acquire you, not, I shouldn't use the word acquire, we're gonna lure you over to our company instead, and we're gonna give you this big fat bonus check up front. The first thing to know is that always comes with what are called golden handcuffs. There is a contract that's signed that they are obligated to stay there for a certain number of years, maybe 5 or 7 or something. And there are lots of advisors out there, and I know of some of them, who will just periodically roll. They'll wait through the term of that contract and then go out and take their book of business and shop it to other financial firms and make another $2 million sort of bonus. Well, that doesn't come out of the goodness of somebody's heart. That company doesn't say, well, we're going to pay you on the book of business. Of course, by the way, it's not that the $2 million upfront bonus replaces the next couple of years. You'll still get whatever you earn off of that. So if you move the whole book of business from one firm over to the other, and it still makes you the same $1 million, you get the $2 million bonus and your annual income of $1 million a year. So that first year, you're going to make 3 million instead of 1 million. That's a huge incentive for people who work in finance to move and then hop around. So every once in a while, they have that conversation where they go around to all their clients, and there'll be some sort of explanation or excuse or something about how they're unhappy, or you should be unhappy, or they have cooler looking logo, or their reports are easier to read, or you like the website better, they have better social media or videos or whatever. You can always find some excuse to move people. But when you do, know that those firms, those financial firms, spend extraordinary amounts of money and time and effort and market research and data analysis to figure out what makes people tick financially. And through my years, I've gotten to know some people who work in an area called behavioral finance, which really is a thing. You can look up, one of the people I actually followed years ago, what's his name? You can find Shlomo Bonartzi. That's actually a person's name. He worked at UCLA Anderson. There's no connection or affiliation. I've never actually met him. I worked with one of his colleagues once, I think, which is what put him on my radar. But you can look at people like Shlomo Bonartzi and see what goes into the thought processes and studies of people's financial behaviors. And what's known, generally speaking, is that when a company captures that book of business and they know that they have it pretty well captive for 5 or 7 years or whatever, that they'll make up that $2 million that they had to pay to buy that book of business. Again, buying is kind of a harsh term, but effectively, I make the argument that that advisor is bought. They're paid for, and they're very limited in their ability to push back at the organization. So when the organization says, hey, we've run analysis on your book of business and you do a lot of investment management. This is a hypothetical again. You do a lot of investment management and you sell mutual funds. Have you thought about maybe switching all of your clients from this mutual fund to this mutual fund? And lo and behold, behind the scenes, they get a bigger kickback maybe from from that mutual fund. Or we look through your whole book of business and we notice that you don't have any of the banking relationships. Did you know we also own a bank? You should encourage your clients to open bank accounts as well. Or um, we notice that looking through your book of business, you have a lot of clients who have children, and we don't see that any of them have 529 college savings plans. Let's add a button to your personal website at our firm, and so your clients can click a button and all open a 529 plan. Well, lo and behold, there'll be some kickbacks, probably, from that 529 and the way that it's structured. Now you're getting the picture. What they've done is bought that $200 million book of business. Again, that's just my hypothetical example. And they've acquired it, and then they will data mine that and work on it for years. They're given 5 years to press and work on. Well, let's flip the script and what should happen. What should happen in a better, reasonable, more rational world is whatever sort of skill training, background, education, and credentials that financial professional has, those should be applied unencumbered exclusively for the better interests of their clients. So instead of, oh, sure, everybody open a bank account here, it should be, I'm as neutral as possible, and let's take a look at all the banks that are available and see the one that's closest to you and fits your needs best. And I don't know, credit cards. Credit cards are another great example. They'll data mine that book of business and figure out who should be switched over, and then they'll create some sort of juicy looking enticement to get credit cards, and then they make interest on the credit card. Or if it's a company, they'll say, oh, did you know we also do payroll processing? The list goes on. These financial firms, especially the big ones, have so many different ways of capturing that book of business and then milking it for profit, that if they're paying $2 million to acquire it, they might quickly get to the point where in 5 years, they've made $20 million in profit off of it, off of just squeezing out all those other things. It can't be. I make the argument, and if you work in finance or are connected with a financial professional, send them my way. I'd love to have the argument and more discussion about this. But I make the argument you can't be neutral. I had a conversation once with a friend of mine I'd worked with briefly on Wall Street. We connected years later. It was one of those conversations. Hey, what's going on? And Let's meet up and grab lunch. Tell me what's happening with the guys." And we knew a lot of the same people, and so we met up for this lunch. And completely off the record, I'll never forget the comment that he made. Um, the the comment that he made was that there was a banking relationship at the financial firm where he was, and he was telling me that they are cramming bank product down our throats with a 2x4. I think that's pretty close to an exact quote from this guy. And why, if you want to serve, if you want to be working in the best interest of the people that are your clients and their families and the businesses that you represent, why be in an environment where you don't really have a voice? You don't. It goes back to that the analogy that I use of doctors during COVID. We're like, well, if I jab a certain number of people, it's alleged. I have to say this. It's alleged. I've seen the sheets, and actually, I looked for one prior to going live on this podcast, live stream. There are sheets that have circulated that allege that doctors made certain bonuses based on the percentage of number of patients that they jabbed during COVID. So if they got whatever it was. If you get over 65% of your patients jabbed with the fifth, sixth, seventh, or eighth, or whatever it was, you could get all the way up to a couple $100,000 in bonus. Well, I don't think this is any different. I think that in the world of finance, this is the equivalent. If somebody's working in finance and they're accepting that $2 million upfront bonus in order to move all their clients, or as many as they possibly can, from one firm over to another firm. And then once they get there, they it's really impossible. It is really impossible to have enough of a voice and enough of a say to tell that firm, "Hey, thanks for the 2 million bucks, but you know what? No thanks. I'm not gonna sell that stuff that you want to sell." I've seen the other side of that. I've seen that equation a few times when I worked at firms that had conflict of interest, and their expectation, literally, I had this conversation face to face with people where I said, that's not my job. My job isn't to sell that product because the firm makes more money. My job is I have clients and I have to work to serve them. And the answer that I got, the one that stands out the most in my mind was somebody who I did briefly have some level of respect for, who basically just said to me, "We were all lied to on the way in. We were all lied to lure us to come work here. Like, you've given up your soul. Don't do that." So this whole thing, and this one. So let me read a little bit from this. This is oh, wow, okay. So yeah, going back to this email, I see there's talk of, here, I'll just read bits of it to you. The past 2 years have shattered records for high dollar wealth management and financial planning deals. But the next two, they're going to be even bigger. Is it time to stay put or make your move from where you are? I'm sort of paraphrasing part of it. It goes on to say they're talking about 5 times, 6 times, 7 times, and recently 8.5 times top line revenue. So imagine if you were making $1 million off of that book of business and somebody offers $8.5 million to buy you as a financial professional. They're going to buy you. Again, I'm using that term specifically and intentionally. I believe that those people are bought. We're going to buy you and we're going to move you and your clients over here. So if they're paying $8.5 million, you know that they plan on making at least that. They know that they will. They do the math. They do the numbers on these things. So, and then oftentimes you'll find a whole office. So it's not just one advisor. You might have 10 advisors and they've got a couple of $1 billion in client, and that's a total office book of business. Same deal. and they'll work something, they'll go back and forth and they'll negotiate and get really aggressive and say, well, 8.5 isn't enough. We want 10 times. So imagine being given $10 million to move your clients from financial firm or insurance firm or whatever it is, bank firm, or whatever, to move it from this place over to this place. And it's actually not the only environment where that exists. I've talked about this before too. Go back and watch the episodes that I did. It was 124, 125, and 126. I did kind of a behind the curtains, um, behind the veil, I think I called it, on 401k plans. The same thing happens with people who sell, again, I'm air quoting that, who sell 401k plans. There's an incentive that it can exist to put company 401k plans with one provider or another and then keep them there. Those are often referred to, there's a finder's fee that somebody might get. There's what's called an override on the plan's assets that they might get for a period of years if they move it from one provider to another. And all of that whole murky world forces the loss of objectivity. So, in case anybody out there is asking the question, I've actually been more than 2 decades in this marketplace and this world. I've had the honor and great fortune of working on some really, really large stuff all across the country. And I've never taken a dollar of any of the above. No finder's fees, no overrides. I think I get the general sense I'm kind of rare. I'm sure I'm not the only one. But overwhelmingly, that siren song of that huge fat bonus check upfront thing to buy me out or to buy me for some period of years and then handcuff me to product sales just doesn't sit well. So that was my rant. If you have any questions, and by the way, I mean, I bring these things up in the hopes that people out there will take these pieces of information and apply it to wherever you are. Ask questions. That's what it's all about. Ask questions. I'm going to use another analogy. I know I shouldn't probably use so many different analogies, but I'm really big recently into health and diet. And I've changed a lot about the way that I eat. And I don't just simply go out to the store and buy whatever's on the shelf that looks crunchy or sweet or pretty packaging. I actually pay attention to the health implications of that. And I think a growing number of people do. My perception, my hope for my audience, the people that listen to UnWoke.Academy, is that you start thinking the same way about your financial life. That's why I did the episodes that I did showing you how to use everything I do on UnWoke is all, I don't use anything that's behind a paywall. I use publicly available web resources like Morningstar and Yahoo Finance. And it doesn't matter. As long as anybody can gain access to it, I do a little bit of research and deep dive analytics. Go back and watch some of those episodes because I show you how to pull your statement and look through and figure out what you've got. Are you funding things that you don't like, that you don't approve of? Because remember, vote your values. You vote every day with your pocketbook. Don't wait for the next presidential election or midterms or whatever. Vote every day with your wallet. That's what UnWoke.Academy is all about. And we help you figure those things out. There is, this is the plug part, there is a financial PMA. That's actually a separate website, financialpma.com. It was born out of this. There's no obligation. Everything we do, you can duplicate, take it to your family member or friend or buddy or college roommate, whoever you work with, I don't care. Take the ideas, the financial PMA, the concepts, everything that we've worked and we deliver, it's all public. Duplicate it. If you want our help, great. We'd be glad to have you. We'd love more members to join the Financial PMA. By the way, if you can support us financially as a paid member, great. If not, no worries. The mission is to get more people awake and aware of the implications of funding far left companies, causes, and countries. Become aware, and we can make America great again. We can focus on America first, which, by the way, there's several episodes that I did that focus on Trump's February 21st America First policy statement. It's an investment policy. Sorry, I confused that. The title of the document, and I'll see if I can share it in the show notes and goodies. That is February 21st, released from the White House. That is the America First investment policy. Investment policy statements are very common in my world. I work in institutional finance. It really just dictates how and where the money gets deployed. And Trump has said in February, enough. Stop overfunding the globalist mega companies that are they're so overfunded. It's ridiculous. And let's get back to free market economy. Look at those episodes. Tell everybody that you know that they need to bypass woke, corrupt media and news and pay attention to what Trump has put out there, because it's an awesome document and it helps instruct things like this in this conversation. So, again, come back and join me at 6:30 tonight. Laura Shar from Gold Standard Elections is going to be my guest. You can find Gold Standard Elections. They have a website and social media presence on X. That's Laura Shar, 6:30 Eastern tonight, Thursday. Hope to see you back here. Take care, everyone.